and welcome to Qlik Spotlight. My name is John Sands, and I've got a couple of interests in my life, and one of those being the Internet of Things, and one of those being retro gaming. Because I remember in my childhood playing Asteroids and Defender and Galaxians and stuff like that. Now I found out through the grapevine that actually someone who I know very well has done a video combining both of those things that I have an interest in, and that's their very own Mike Tarallo. Now he has created a video on YouTube. It's had nearly over 1,300 views on there, so it's on the Qlik channel. So you can always go along and have a look at that. So welcome, Mike, and thanks for getting involved in Spotlight.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure having you on. So most people at Qlik will know you, but for those of you who don't know you, then tell a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Absolutely. So, as John had mentioned, my name is Mike Tarallo. I've been with Qlik since. I'm so used to saying Qlik since. I've been with Qlik a little over 6 years now after the Expressor acquisition in 2012. From a whole career perspective, it's about 20 plus years within BI and data integration space, spanning proprietary and open source BI, data visualization, and ETL companies. Pretty much in the realm of customer support, technical support, and then pre-sales. And then when I joined Expressor, they needed somebody to work pre-sales and marketing. So I did that for a little while. And then when Qlik was picking up Expressor at that point, they needed somebody in marketing. So I went over to the product marketing team. And it was there where I started to find a new love for producing video content for the Expressor videos.
Yeah, and that's where people are going to certainly have heard you and seen you will be on those Expressor videos. And on a side note, the Expressor and now with Podium Data, there's a little bit of synchronization between those two, isn't there?
There is, but talking with some of the higher ups, I was kind of like making sure that what this acquisition for Podium wasn't going to be like an Expressor 2.0. So to speak.
Agree, yeah.
And it really isn't. It is more focused on at-scale data preparation capability. And with our strategies for multi-cloud and the big data index, this is going to fit in perfectly with that. I'm fairly new to a lot of the Podium data information. I was given it only about a week ago when I started to produce a video for that. But I see this is going to be slightly different than the way Expressor handled data preparation.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that's the question I was going to ask you. If you must be involved in getting, I know you did the, and there is one out there for everyone watching. There is a Podium Data video that you've done already, isn't it? About a couple of minutes, sort of help to
Correct, just an overview.
Demystify it. Fantastic. Anyway, let's get back to the main subject. So as I said before in the intro, the Internet of Things, which is a fascinating subject, and then retro gaming. I mean, how did you link those two together, and why did you link those two together?
I guess I describe myself as like a jack of all trades, right? Master of a few or master of many. And I like to dabble in everything, right? As you guys know, I do video content, but it's not somebody says, here's a script, record it, and then somebody else puts all the clicks to it, for example. I actually do all of the hands-on stuff as well. So I internalize a lot of that. And it makes for a video that's probably better production because it's the person actually using it and doing it and knows how to present it. So what happened was we're at Connections, and I was already privy to this IoT race game that was done over in Europe, but they set it up at Connections, and Daniel Lunkman, I think that's how it's pronounced, introduced me to what they were doing, and he explained at a high level of how it works. Now, I have enough interest to be dangerous with technology and electronics, and he introduced me to the Wemos microprocessor, and we talked a little bit, and immediately the retro gaming thing has always been a passion of mine. It's something that I've always loved, video games and then collections and stuff. We can talk about that later. But immediately when Daniel mentioned how the cars are initiating a sensor and picking up a signal voltage, and then the microprocessor is registering that. Basically, at that point, the microprocessor registers that data. It could be streamed to a file or written to a file, an SD card, etc. Regardless, it's collecting data. So in order for me to take interest in something and really learn about it, it's got to be something that's of interest to me. And, I'm not interested in sales data. And, we always create these demonstrations with, profit, sales, cost, etc. So I said, how can I learn about this and make it interesting where I want to continue to learn about this? And I said, well, I have a little side hobby where I create custom controllers for the retro games. So instead of using the original joysticks, you can use a control pad.
Yeah.
So I said, let me take the feedback or the input that's coming from the controller and feed it into a microprocessor. And let me see if I could capture those movements, because all it's really doing at that time, it's registering a connection or no connection, 1 or 0, voltage or no voltage. So up, down, left, right, push buttons, etc. And that's what gave me an interest. Maybe I can capture those movements and then, of course, put a Qlik sense spin on it, because at that point it's data, and then create a dashboard where how many times did this game require pushing up or pushing down or left and right or fire A or fire B, etc. And then mingle that with other gaming data like gaming scores, gaming players, gaming time, how long the person played.
I like the way that you could actually work out which button would wear out the quicker. That was fascinating.
Oh, well, that's obviously there's got to be like what kind of business value behind it, right? You want to do prediction life cycle. This controller is only going to last you, so many hours, let's say, of gameplay.
And you
so
3D printed those, didn't you? You got those 3D printed, the controllers.
No, so that's a great little story. So Joe Warmington does a lot of 3D printing stuff, and when we were talking about it, we found the schematic to 3D print a case for it just to see if it could be done.
Yeah.
Currently, I just get my cases off of eBay, but Joe printed me out one at Connections, and didn't exactly fit the PCB, the printed circuit board, right, but this is something I'll explore at a later date. But Joe printed me up a nice little with like a paperweight I use on my desk now.
and I love the blending of old and new. So you've got the old of asteroids and so on, the Space Invaders, and the new, which is the Internet of Things and the 3D printing, etc. That blend makes it does make it fascinating.
Exactly. And it, if anything, it sparks an interest. It's an art form. We want people to continue to be engaged with it, who share similar interests. But even for those who don't share an interest in retro gaming, but might share an interest in learning about Internet of Things and the microprocessors, it'll spark them to do something else. And that's how other people create like irrigation sensors where, the water gets low, the moisture is low, and there's a sensor that is hooked up, and then it'll automatically trigger a sprinkler, let's say. I did something with the retro gaming in the aspect, but it could be applied to any instance of where signals or sensors are capturing data.
Yeah, and the Internet of Things is actually a very huge subject, isn't it? I mean, down to, one of the facts I learned, and if you ever watch me present, you've heard this many, many times, was the gathering of data and using that to help people cross the road. So you'd have a sensor on the person themselves if they're over 65. I think it's an RF chip or something, and that would give you longer to cross the road. But that again, you're gathering more and more data, and it's a fascinating subject. And we are not going to have enough time, and maybe that's a subject for another interview, Mike, as we can dig down a bit deeper into the Internet of Things. So we've given everyone quite a good understanding of what it is, and the video that you've done also, I think, is a very good short introduction to what the Internet of Things was. But let's go and have a look at this actually happening.
Inspired by our big data IoT race game at Connections, I wanted to learn more, how it worked, what was going on under the covers, how was the data being collected and processed, etc. I did my research and started to learn more about these little things. In summary, I discovered that these devices are based on an open source electronics platform that uses hardware and software known as Arduino. Overall, I learned enough to try something that I originally thought about at Connections, and of course, it was retro gaming related. As I played a game on my Atari 2600, wouldn't it be cool if I could capture my game movements from my control pad? I could then feed that data into Qlik Sense and produce some analysis on the movements. I could even augment the data with game titles and player info and scoring to create game and player stats. The data could even tell me which game would wear out my controller the most. Collect enough, and you could even predict the lifespan of your controller. Obviously, these may not be pragmatic, but it was definitely a fun way to learn about IoT while applying it to something I love, retro gaming and, of course, Qlik. So the thinking of just putting that video together is I wanted to basically describe a brief history, what Internet of Things is, how it's applied in today's real world, pretty much explaining anything could be, apply to the Internet of Things, and then put my passion of retro gaming into it. And basically, the little montage at the end is really more of just the collection of the repeated process, and then obviously feeding that data into ClickSense. That could always be expanded upon. For my example, I work very fast. I have to get something done, and then as soon as I do it, I'm done with it, and I move on to the next project. Ideally, behind my desk, which you don't see, I have tons of parts: Arduino, Wemos. It's all these sensors. The next step would be, for example, to stream it directly to an HTTP server or an FTP server, or even stream it directly into Qlik Core, for example. And there's people doing that already. So by means, I'm not an expert on all of that, but I know it can be done because our experts have already done stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think hopefully, and what will be really good, and is that people get inspired by this and go off and do their own projects.
Exactly.
And if you do, if anyone does, by the way, do please get in touch and let me know so we can maybe feature that. So if it does plant that seed, then that would be amazing. Okay, so we're gonna slightly shift now, Mike, and we're going to try and find a little bit more about who is Mike Tarallo. So you're obviously a very busy man and got lots on your plate, but when you can relax, how do you relax?
So I don't think, if those who know me, and John, you know me really well, and you talk to me, I'm animated, I'm high, I don't want to call myself high strung, but type A Italian personality. I don't think the word relax is in my vocabulary. I don't really drink, and I don't smoke cigars, and I don't watch sports that much, but I guess you could say the way I relax. I mean, one thing I wanted to mention earlier, I'm a family guy. I love interacting and being with my family. Our family, 3 children and my wife, we're very close. We do almost everything together. So part of away from the Internet of Things and retro gaming is spending time with family. But that's not always relaxing because there's the stresses of the daily life, right? So I try to balance workload, health, and family. If one of those things come out of whack, then it affects the others, right?
Yeah, of course.
I would say if I do relax, it's just the interest in tinkering. I do a lot of DIY, handyman stuff around the house. My whole house is home automation with the, Alexa and Z-Wave technologies. I can control everything with voice automation. So if I have free time, it's like, what can I do next? What can I integrate? And then the rest of the stuff is really tinkering with all my electronics and my toys, but it's not relaxing in the sense that you're just like sitting there and your mind is clear. My mind is always thinking. If I have time, it's like after everybody's asleep, because I don't want to feel that sort of like guilty feeling, like, oh, the kids are up, I should be spending time with my son or my daughters or my wife. So it's like, okay, it's 11 o'clock, they're sleeping, I'm going to go to my workbench, so to speak. And I think of it as like a little software industry. I have my R&D time where I'm trying to think of what new controller could I build.
And isn't it good, Mike? Isn't it good that actually, and this is something I find myself actually being a little bit guilty about, is enjoying work, and that makes it relaxing if you're enjoying what you're doing. Not all the time, of course. I'm not abnormal, but doing stuff sometimes that really catches your eye. So, if you had a food that you least like, what would that be and why?
It's hard to think. People normally say liver and onions, but that's not even something I've even
tried.
Is
another one.
Well, I haven't even tried those. So in other words, I don't want them. So they're not even on the scale of least to most, right? If there's anything that's least, I like lemon and I like chicken, but I don't like lemon chicken. My mom made that for me as a kid. It's disgusting. It's just not a combination. It's like when somebody mixes, mayonnaise and raisins and carrots. I like all 3 of those separately, but when you mix them together, it's so nasty. So
I'm totally with you on that one. Sweet stuff with savory stuff is off my radar.
Unless it's barbecue, maybe I like that.
Yeah, maybe a bit then. So I am your fairy godmother now. You can imagine me as your fairy godmother, and I can give you a superpower. One superpower. What would that be?
It's a toss up between like immortality or invincibility. Or what do you call that? Not transportation. No.
No. Teleportation.
I just said teleportation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Being able to, teleport myself from one area to the other. I'm not a big flyer. I have a lot of anxiety. I don't like to fly, but I know I'm also missing out on a lot of things in the world because I don't really opt to jump on a plane if I can't. So I think maybe teleportation might be
Okay.
one of the things, and I could teleport maybe to different places in the galaxy as long as I could,
But wouldn't
exist
that
there.
also be amazing? So no security, no customs, no nothing. Just
Yeah, I just go
take me
snap his
there.
fingers.
Ah, that
Exactly.
would be fantastic. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So, okay, last question. What's
Okay.
next on your radar then? What have you got, or what is there a particular milestone
Okay.
you're hoping to reach this year?
So, I mean, I got my notes written here, but yeah, actually, the podium data I've been involved in. So
Hmm.
there's some work that's going to be put that way. And this time of year is the Gartner RFP. So
Ooh.
I'm going to
Hmm.
be heavily involved in the video creation for that. Hopefully, a lot of the work that we've done in prior years is still reusable. But obviously, our September release is coming.
Yeah.
The Gartner RFP and the podium stuff are probably going to take up a lot of my time. On a
Yeah.
personal note, my daughter is starting college, so that's going to take
Ah,
some time out of her.
so you'll
Very
have no
excited
money
about that
then.
too. No, exactly. Well, student loans, but
Ah.
hopefully she got scholarships too. So
Oh,
hopefully
fantastic.
that'll help here and there.
Fantastic. Well, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure as always, and we've had
Thank you.
many a chat before, and yeah, we met at connections, etc. So,
Oh,
thank you so
absolutely.
much. Enjoy the rest of your year. I'm sure we'll catch up at some point, and thank you for getting involved in Spotlight. It's been
My
brilliant.
pleasure. Thanks for including me. And if you guys ever need to get in touch with me with anything, feel free to reach out. I'm a people pleaser. I hate to say no.
I certainly will do. Thank you very much.
Take care. See you later.
And you.